Yo guys, what is good? I hope you're all doing absolutely amazing and are trading safely in the markets. It's your boy VGOK and I'm back with another video for you guys today. Now in this video I'm going to be looking at over the indices and the Forex pairs that I like to look at, pretty much a market outlook, and I'm also going to be having a look over the news as well. Now I appreciate that you guys would have found this video a bit more useful had I have released it on Sunday. However, I've reserved that privilege for those of you that are in my private mentorship who get to see it live at the time of the recording. Now obviously if that's something that interests you and you're wanting to know more about that, then do drop me a message on my Instagram. The link to my Instagram is going to be in the description below, and just drop me a message saying mentorship and we can discuss things further. But with that all being said, let's jump straight into the market outlook. So quick look into the news for this week before we get started and have a look at the Forex pairs. So as you can see, on Monday we've got a lot of Euro news and GBP news for that during London session actually, and we do actually have flash services for the US dollar at 2:45 PM UK time as well. So sort of just after the NYSE Open we'll have a decent amount of news. There should be a good amount of volatility for Monday as well for the dollar, so maybe some early moves in the week to sort of secure that percentage gain. And then looking forward to the rest of the week, as you can see here, FOMC members speaking on Tuesday, 3 o'clock news for the dollar on CB consumer confidence as well. And then looking forward, the main thing I can see on the Wednesday is going to be obviously this Canadian dollar interest rate being released. Obviously the previous interest rate being 3.25%, they're looking to they're forecasting actually it to be 3.75, so we'll see what the actual result will be, but they're sort of forecasting interest rates to rise by 0.5%, as you can see right there, and that will obviously be for the Canadian dollar, so keep your eyes on that if you do trade the CAD. And then the main thing on Thursday, obviously for the euro, which is something I like to look at a lot, is going to be the euro interest rates being released, and as you can see they're looking to, or they're forecasting an increase of plus 0.75%, which is quite a lot. So yeah, main thing on there will be the euro interest rates. Definitely some volatility for euro USD, Eurojpy, maybe some pound pairs as well around 1:15 PM on Thursday. And then on Friday, slightly less, but maybe I think it'll be over Asian session anyway for this JPY monetary policy statement, which they usually have once a month. I think it's usually around about 2 AM or 3 AM or something, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so that will be sort of out of trading hours for us anyway for the Friday, but looking forward to 1:30 PM on Friday we've got that core PC price index news coming in as well, so it will be interesting to see how that affects obviously the dollar, DXY, EU, GU, all the nice pairs that we like to look at, so yeah, keeping an eye on that as well. So it's sort of a medium sort of week in terms of how much volatility there'll be. Last week was quite quiet in terms of news, but next week, just have a quick look towards next week. As we can see, next week is going to be NFP. It's the first Friday of the new month next week, so something to look into. That is going to be obviously US dollar unemployment rates, but I'll be going into all of that stuff in more detail in next week's market outlook call. But yeah, as you can see, we've got monetary policy interest rates for the GBP next week, unemployment rates for the dollar, so next week's going to be a very big week. And we've also got the FOMC federal funds rate on Wednesday, so it's actually a massive week of news next week. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially what happens next week. But yeah, for this week, slightly less crazy than that week, but still enough volatility to see some decent size moves and to catch some decent moves in the markets. Okay, so starting off this week's market outlook, let's start things off by looking at GBP USD. And from what we can see, looking at the daily time frame, we're trying to see if this bearish order flow is going to continue. Now, looking at the immediate price action, we can see how price has retraced into this demand zone and given us a movement to the upside. It does look like it's kind of taken this demand zone out on the daily time frame, but as we zoom in, we can see what sort of a mitigation that this has actually been. So if we draw out the entire zone just there, you can see it doesn't quite just get to the end of the zone. It kind of respects it and then continues upwards. But we're going to have a look at a couple of scenarios which could happen on this. So yeah, as we can see, this last sell to buy candle in here, which I was looking at for this demand zone on the 2-hour time frame, I believe it's also hourly as well. As you can see in here, the sell before buy area, the liquidity taken out, the sharp movement upwards with the imbalance. We can see our price comes into it nicely over here and gives a good rejection to the upside. We've also had a creation of this trend line here as well, so we've got 1, 2, 3 touches of this trend line, so more liquidity forming on the top side over here. So a couple things I'm thinking is either we get a retracement down to retest this demand to see if it is really that strong, then we can get a retracement and then a continuation move upwards. Or if the whole idea of this demand zone here was to just bring price back up, create liquidity, and then induce it afterwards by sort of taking out any trendline liquidity there and then getting a sharp movement down, then we can look at potentially playing some sort of short scenarios. Now, looking at the short scenario side of things, obviously we'd be looking somewhere within this 45-minute buy to sell candle, as it's the last buy before sell candle, in this leg downwards. And then as we go into the 30-minute, the 15 and the 5, we can start to see in a bit more detail how this is sort of built up on that sell side. So looking at the 5-minute time frame in there, and just having another extra look down in this region here. So as we zoom in and sort of make things a bit clearer to see, the obvious spot that I can potentially see right now is going to be this area here. And probably from there upwards to the whole, to incorporate the whole zone, just in case there is any smaller time frame wicks for it to mitigate into. So that's going to be the main zone I'm looking for, and we can see clean imbalance after that. We've got liquidity with these wicks over here as well, so it looks like a decent sort of little point of interest to sort of base our sells upon, and extending that outwards. As we can see, price, I think it's just about tapped it, or maybe it could potentially come into it again maybe. Now if that is a successful tap of that zone and a drop down, then we could potentially play off this candle. Now it's very close to current price, so obviously timing of the trade, if it does get into there and it's still sort of market open tonight, probably won't look to play it. I'll probably prefer a deeper retracement into the zone and then it to drop off. That would be a bit nicer to see. Yeah, zooming back out, we can see the imbalance fill in here is just about being filled in, so potentially a second mitigation into that zone and then a drop. That seems viable as well. And you see how aggressive it was coming upwards, and it started to slow down in its upwards movement, starting to consolidate in this region. So it's interesting to see what will happen in this region. If we go down to a lower time frame as well now, so the 3-minute and the 1-minute time frames, we can actually start to see a potential distribution schematic forming. So you can see the starting of the distribution, then the main manipulation over here, break of structure to the downside, successful break of structure as well. So there is a chance for us to potentially start selling off slightly earlier in here. Somewhere in there would be decent, and we could look at a potential 7-8 pip stop in there. But like I said before, if we do decide to go higher into that zone, maybe manipulate once more into the zone and then drop, then we'll prepare for that as well. So it depends what time. If by London session this is still not being tapped, this potential entry is not being tapped, then we can still go for it for GU for the sells to the downside. And in terms of how low we can look to target all these demand zones in here, so I'd say something definitely in here. As you can see, this supply zone here was taken out, so there's definitely some sort of zone in there we can look to target into. So I believe TP1 around this region here, about 1 to 11, 1 to 10, even it depending on your targets, the amount of percentage gain that you need. But yeah, ideally this structural point looks good, and also this area down in here, because it's the last area before it is obeying bearish order flow in that movement there, still obeying it, and then it disproved the bearish order flow in that movement up. So over here, if we start to see any potential demand zone in here that gets any respect, then we can sort of shift our bias in this region as well. So this is the area of demand I'd be looking into right in there. and yeah, obviously the one down here as well from the original push up on Friday. So if we mark that out as well, and that brings us to our demand zones that we're looking at. Yeah, like so. So yeah, looking into that sort of area there for the demand zone, and let's see if we can get some sort of movement similar to that. Yeah, that's sort of a half a trade planned out there depending on market open tonight. So that's for GBP USD. Moving on to Gbpjpy, again starting from the daily. Now as we can see, we've had, you know, a degree of resistance over here, you know, something pushing price down, supply that is in power in this rough region, and then we have had this buy up and then this sell off to the downside as well. So that's interesting. It could be a potential buy to sell scenario. It wasn't quite quick in the movement down. It had to go up, consolidate for a couple of days, and then it started to drop down. And in this daily candle we can already see a rejection to the upside for Gbpjpy over here. So potentially let's see if that can actually work out. Looking at this, we've already had that rejection come up for Gbpjpy. And looking into lower time frames, as we can see, the 4 hour it's had a second mitigation of this zone that we were looking at earlier on. I think it was last Friday we were looking into this region to get those continuation buys up. Or was it 2 Fridays ago? Probably 2 weeks ago this was, maybe. But yeah, 2 weeks ago it's come back into that region. Definitely we're going to be looking at some supply zones in here, as these demand zones here have been broken. So something definitely to contend with in there. And let's just clean up the chart by deleting all this old analysis in here. Cool. We're going to have another look into this a bit more detail as well, the demand zone which it seems to have bounced off of. So yeah, something in here definitely bounced. If anything, liquidity taken below this wick in here. As you can see, it's been a very sharp movement down, just about enough to go below that low, and then a sharp movement upwards. So let's have a look within there another time. So yeah, here you can see the breaker structure coming up in this move here. So if we're looking within there somewhere, we could be looking, yeah, somewhere in there, which we've already given that reaction from as well. So I'd be looking into this region in here. It would be very interesting to look at. And as you can see, we've got that sell to buy movement away. It's coming to this imbalance fill here, but not the lower one in here, so potentially coming back in. As you can see, the bearishness is still strong in this movement down, maybe causing price to continue further down, get that full mitigation in, and then it going higher up. So something to defo look into for tonight / Monday, so tomorrow morning, is going to be this for Gbpjpy. And yeah, as we can see, yeah, got that sell to buy movement in there, potentially coming into here, taking liquidity out below that wick, and then maybe seeing some more bullishness. So definitely worth setting an alert around there. Now if we go back to the 45 minute, I just want to have a look into this as well. Let's go start from the 4 hour. So obviously from what we can see here, let's analyze the whole consolidation area over here. So we can see we've got this trend line in here, 1, 2, 3 touches of the trend line, 4 touches of the trend line almost in here. Then we've had that buy to sell movement, no break of structure, but then we had this mitigation and then the drop. So looking into the 2 hour and the 1 hour time frames, we can see the mitigation of that last wick in there. You can see the break of structure down here. On the smaller time frames looks a bit more visible obviously than the 4 hour time frame. And I think within that region we can call that the first supply zone in here, over there, and yeah, extending that out we can see the mitigation happening right in there. So potentially this last buy to sell candle, potentially another supply zone for us to concentrate in on, maybe see a distribution within the next zone, and then we can look to play. Seems pretty nice. Let's have a look on lower time frames just to see if it all looks good. Yeah, pretty much from this major drop off, as you can see prices dropped off aggressively here, breaking this order flow. So definitely looking within here onwards for that supply zone, and I believe it's probably a nice zone on the 30 minute. I think it was it 45? Yeah, that 45 minute last candle in there. Looking at the 30 minute, it's that last bullish candle with the imbalance fill just there as well. So looking into that area there for GJ sells, and I think if we could look to play in between those two, those rough regions, then I think we should be looking good. Yeah, but ideally if we're looking to sell, we'd like to sell it up there. That'd be nice. And from current price, that's about 200 pips away. So obviously if we can get into the buys, we'll have a 200 pip potential move to the upside before we can, you know, take off majority of the volume of the buys and then concentrate maybe on the sells if we get confirmation. So yeah, ideally we're looking into that for GJ. And then looking at Euro USD next, so looking into the daily time frame again, and that 30-minute time frame here, you can see it's just about trying to manipulate, mitigate that into that region there. So let's remind ourselves of that 30-minute zone that we've had marked up and why we've had it marked up. So we can see here we've got this rally, base, rally movement in there, where we can see price has taken out this previous supply zone. And when we look at how price has reacted into there, we can see a clean sell to buy region into there, almost reacting into the 30 minutes. So I don't know if it can come still further back into it, but to me this looks like it's almost ready to keep on going bullish for EU. So I think DXY, which we'll come into next, is going to be quite bearish looking on the, you know, these intraday time frames. But something I really want to look into, obviously, because we've had price over here. Yeah, so we've had price over here, liquidity taken out below these wicks in this movement upwards. So definitely a demand zone to look at before this 30-minute one, if that's still not touched. And I believe the 45 and the 30-minute time frames look good enough for that as well again. So the 30-minute time frame again, we're going to have a look into this region over here. Yeah, so this same sort of region in here, it could potentially come below this whole region and get into the original 30-minute zone we looked at. But just keeping this as a monitoring zone, we can potentially look into that demand as well for potential buys. And then on the flip side, let's look at the supply side of things. Obviously this area is still open from, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks ago. And we are looking like we're coming up aggressively. I don't know if we will get the retracement down into here and then further. I've got a feeling it will look just to continue its movement. And, you know, ideally, obviously, as this major trend line on the higher time frame is extended, like so, you know, if we can come up to meet this trend line, induce liquidity, create liquidity, and then spike up above it into this original supply zone and continue this trend downwards, that would be ideal. That's what we're kind of looking for, I think. I think we've also got a supply zone in here to look at as well. So I think let's shift to the 8-hour time frame. And yeah, 8-hour time frame, we've got this base drop scenario, this buy before sell candle in there to look at. So I'm just going to reanalyze this whole region in here. Okay, I don't know why it's not selecting all that, but let's go into the 4-hour time frame and we're going to look into there. Let's delete all of that and let's mark on from the 8-hour zone again. So using this as the potential 8-hour supply, higher time frame supply. And yeah, just underneath this zone we can see how price is built up in its liquidity in the wicks over here. And whether it's going to be respecting that, if that's enough of respect for it to now continue. This is a very strong movement upwards, as you can see in this bullish engulfing candle. So I definitely want to see, hopefully it slowed down, maybe a liquidity grab above these wicks and then it's ready to drop down. This could be the earlier area to look for sells, obviously not ruling out this top area either just yet. But obviously once we look at DXY next, we'll be able to have probably a bit of a better idea in terms of which direction EURUSD wants to be looking to go. So yeah, let's look into that this area here, and on the smaller time frames we're going to analyze the region just a bit more. The way that this reacted into this supply zone, I don't really think that this little one here is going to be holding. We'll keep it on there for now. If it does respect it, then so be it, and then we'll look for potential continuation buys up. But for me personally, I think there's definitely going to be something in here which we can potentially react into. Yeah, so I think if I just put a rough line here, you can see this last big bullish candle before the main drop off. I'm going to see the open of that candle there marked up like that. Potentially if we spike into this region here and then drop down, then we can look at shorting EU, and hopefully we see DXY reversing and being bullish a little bit then if that's the case. But yeah, looking to play in between those zones. Let's set an alert for the sell side as well, so ideally probably just above where price is now. If price can come up, take out those highs, then we'll be notified and we'll know about it. And yeah, I think that will be it for EU. But yeah, moving on now to DXY, and as you can see, the recent movement of the previous trading day was this big bearish move down. At one point we were all thinking bullish, seeing how reaction was from here, quite nice. But then obviously we saw the reversal in this region for it to continue downwards and take out this demand zone here and whatnot. It's also taken out this zone now as well, so I think this is the next one that we're looking into in terms of demand zones for the DXY. So definitely worth putting an alert down there for that. Apart from that region, I can't really see much for the demand side. Let's have a look into the supply side as well though. What can we see? Okay, yeah, so let's clear this chart up a bit more first. So obviously these are all invalidated zones now, so let's get rid of them. And let's just see what's happened in this region. So have we taken out? Yeah, we've just about cleared liquidity above this high here. As you can see in this movement up, this buy to sell movement here, we can see it's taking liquidity, big drop down. There's definitely a degree of distribution in there, some sort of zone to look at in there as well. And on the 30-minute, let's just check the 45 again. Yeah, 45-minute zone, let's go for that one. This buy to sell candle in here as a potential supply zone. Obviously I'm not saying this is going to be the supply zone to play off of, but something to monitor when price gets there. So 45-minute supply zone to monitor right in there. And yeah, we'll put another alert in there as well, makes sense. So if we can play in between these zones for DXY, that would be good. And obviously you can see how it relates to the opposite sort of bias on EU. So you can see that sell to buy on the 30-minute for EU is pretty much the same sort of area as this 45-minute supply zone on DXY. As you can see, DXY and EU, they're oppositely correlated. But yeah, I think for DXY that will do for now. Sort of just playing these intraday zones and then just playing playing the zones which give respect basically. I want to look at Eurusdjpy next. So yeah, starting from the daily time frame, is continuing this bullish bias. So I think it's probably wise right now, even when we do see something like this buy to sell movement. Shorter term sells, yes, they may work out, but in terms of the larger time frames, larger perspective, the bullishness seems to be working out more for these XXXJPYs as the Japanese yen loses strength continuously. So wisest thing to do will probably look at demand in terms of that. And yeah, as you can see, we've got these smaller areas here that we're looking at for demand. So just going to be stretching these out. As you can see, this first one here on the smaller time frame is given a bounce up, so we're going to have a look at that in more detail on the lower time frames. But as you can see, this area here gave respect again, and it's just continuing that bullish order flow. So best thing to look at that on the higher time frames is definitely bullish. Now as we go into the 4-hour time frame, we can see how big this candle was on Friday last week. And as we see the bounce in that region, I believe this is based on I think it was a 45-minute or 30-minute zone, maybe an hourly zone it was. Yeah, this hourly region in here, basically this sell to buy region, and mainly looking at this wick in here, this sell to buy sort of region in there is what I'm potentially looking at. But yeah, basically the main thing to look at in there is obviously because we've got the bounce in there so strongly, potentially that could be ready to go up already. We do have these other zones here that we've not sort of seen price get mitigated into yet. So we've got the 30-minute rally base rally in there, which obviously let's go to the 30-minute and have a look at it. And as we have a look in there, we've got this nice little doji candle. We've got that rally, the base in the doji candle there, and then the rally upwards, which takes out this previous area of supply, and if I'm not mistaken, other areas of supply as well. So you know, all of this is sort of eventually taken out by that as well. And then another smaller zone in here which it potentially may bounce into, but again, we're just going to be monitoring these zones, and whichever gets the successful bounce, the successful confirmations, then we'll play those as usual. Now of course on the sell side, if it doesn't want to do that, if it continues up and then decides to give a retracement up to here and then a continuation back down, then that's fair enough as well. Let's have a look into the higher time frames for the sell side as well. So immediately, obviously the 4 hour, you can see the buy to sell manipulative sort of movement there. Looking back at Eurujpy on the hourly time frame as well, you can see how the demand was continuously, you know, being respected in this movement here. It bounced off this blue demand zone, continuation upwards, and then we saw the big drop down. So because of that, I think, yeah, we'll have to definitely mark up a supply zone just because of this big drop down, the big you know, disprovement of that continuous bullish order flow. And looking into the 45-minute time frame, we can see, you know, the rough areas we're going to be looking into. Mainly it's going to be this buy to sell region in there, and then smaller time frame as we go lower and lower, we're going to have another look as well. So 30-minute and the 15-minute, and just going into the 5 as well. Yeah, so in here we can see multiple zones. So instead of having that as a larger zone, I'm going to have multiple zones. So the first one is going to be in this region here as that top high, you know, deep retracement style of move. And then this base drop on the 5-minute also looks quite interesting as well. So depending on whether we get movement in there, and then, you know, we've got other zones in here as well to think about as well. So let's see which ones have taken out significant areas. Yeah, I think let's just keep that 15-minute. You can see this wick in here as the next supply zone down. I think that would be the easiest way to look at that. And if we do decide to get, you know, slow accumulation in here, it decides to come up in here and then turn into redistribution. So if it decides to you know, continue those buy to sell movements in here, then we can look to, you know, maybe play a measured move of this impulse, you know, again in this movement here. So looking good for EJ right in there. Moving on to UJ, as you can see, we were trading within that monthly zone for so long. You know, this monthly zone which we've had marked up for God knows how many weeks now and months. But yeah, as you can see, this buy to sell movement in there, we're waiting to see what price does in that region. And this is the first major rejection of that zone. You know, look how bullish UJ has been in this whole time. And we've had that major rejection finally. So, you know, at one point we were just looking very bullish all the time, and I was like, when is this UJ going to start dropping down? But as we can see on the daily time from now, it's moving up. It was moving up very strongly, and then all of a sudden it's found something to drop off of. So potentially that could be the sort of move away from this zone we were looking at. Now, of course, it's going to be something in here that we want to be interested in terms of the sells. I think best thing to do is just set alerts in these imbalance filled regions over here. And as price can get closer and closer, it's going to be pretty obvious what we're looking into because of the we know what zone it's looking at. Now, obviously, on the flip side of things, in terms of the continuation buy sort of moves, then yeah, there's on the 4 hour right in here, we can see these two doji candles acting as nice little bases for demand style of moves. So just treating that as a demand zone for now, and we can see obviously that's what's caused this bounce up. You know, liquidity capture just below this wick in here. As you can see, price gone just below that wick and then given that strong rejection to the upside. Looking at the 2 hour and the 1 hour and the 45-minute time frames, we can see a bit more detail of how this is all built up and how it's all made up of. And I think we'll probably have to go to the 5 minute to see in more detail what this has actually been doing. So yeah, no break of structure until this movement here. Did that even break structure? It didn't even break structure. So I don't even know if this has broken structure just yet, because ideally on the 5 minute time frame, this area here would be a good structural break area. So if we can go above here, then we've got a nice break of structure. But for now, what it's been doing is just reacting in this buy to sell in here. As you can see, price has dropped off in there, given this movement down in here as well. So I think maybe continuations may be on the cards rather than anything else right now. Looking into the 3-minute time frame, obviously there's going to be breaks of structure in this movement here. At the low we go down the time frames, and as we can see, you know, the original bounce up and then having, you know, the reactions off that last sell to buy has given us, you know, this bounce in here. So whether that's enough to really force price up or whether it wants to reject from this region, we're going to have a couple zones marked up just so we know what's going to happen, and then maybe later on in the week we'll get that major move which we want in terms of the sells. So yeah, quite hard to see on the 1 minute in here, but yeah, probably best just to monitor how price moves in this movement up. If we do see a break of structure to the downside, then it might be worth playing, you know, the sell down off that region. Just looking at the Fibonacci retracement as well off that zone. So this impulse over here, as we can see, it's just about done a 61.8 retracement and it's decided to drop. So, you know, early retail sellers may be getting in, you know, early as soon as market opens in this region on that 61.8 retracement. Of course, we know the area we like to look at is that 71 to 78% retracement. So maybe a further manipulation up into that zone and then a drop down. Yeah, ideally the zone of interest, if you're basing it off a fib, the way I like to do it is just simply off the 71 up to the top. So it makes it a larger point of interest, but you know, it's there is logic behind it why we're using it. So you could treat that as the sort of point of interest. If you do see price coming into there and then selling off, then it might be worth looking at sells, continuation sells, and then, you know, you can see price maybe getting deeper into here. As you can see, the imbalance fill on the 1 minute for UJ down here has not completely been filled in over there, and as I zoom in you can see the imbalance fill in there and price hasn't quite got in there. So maybe a liquidity capture below this low, you know, enough for price to be pushed from this region downwards into this imbalance fill, and then we may see the bullishness from that zone be fulfilled. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing on UJ for now. Let's have a look at the indices. So US30 to start with, and I was doing a bit of analysis on this earlier on, so already done a bit there. But yeah, starting from the daily time frame, as we can see, the daily rally-based rally, which we've had analysed for a while now. We saw price spike into there, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, in this movement here. Saw the proof of it getting obeyed over here, and it's continuing its way upwards. So ideally, we want to be looking at you know, bullish sort of moves if we can look to get into long positions for indices at the moment. At least up until this region in here, this region here, and, you know, we've got imbalances up there as well. Yeah, ideally, if you can see this start to retrace, you can see the bullish order flow is getting respected now quite nicely. So moving down to the 8-hour time frame, and we can see how aggressive that last candle was on that Friday. So look again, sorry, on the 4-hour, and we can see obviously this is the demand zone which it's given respect to, which I believe, yeah, I think it was a 45-minute or 30-minute region, something anyway in there. And it's basically from here onwards we started to see price you know, taking out this previous supply zone. Now obviously we'd be looking in here first, but then we saw price come into there quite quickly, continuation down, and it's this region which has given that major spike up. So as we look into the 30-minute time frame, here you can see a bit more detail why I'm choosing this area. You know, we've got a nice manipulative wick in there, sharp, quick movement, so hopefully looking that will give us a good reaction. And as we can see in this region here, it's the last these 3 consecutive 30-minute candles down before this major move up. So yeah, that looks pretty good in terms of that. And then switching it down to the 15-minute onwards, we can see this last sell before buy candle in here before price takes out this previous supply zone and then this previous supply as well, pushing price down, and then that gets taken out. So I think the one that I prefer is going to be this one. It looks a lot nicer, to be honest. So if you see price coming in here, see some sort of reaccumulation forming in here, and then we can look to sort of take it to the upside for the next couple of legs for US30. And then looking into the 5-minute, a bit more detail you can see, but I think that looks pretty good for US30 on the whole. Sell side, obviously we're going to be looking into this buy to sell up there, but we're very far away, so I think we'll have time to look into that later on as well. And then moving on to Nasdaq, I think Nasdaq's looking pretty similar in terms of obviously this supply zone here still not met, which I think we're definitely going to be meeting that very soon, where the market will gap up when market opens and stuff for indices, which I think is Monday morning when that opens, so we've still got a bit more time for that. So yeah, we'll see how that works out for Nasdaq. But yeah, I think it's these similar zones, these same zones which we've had marked up on Nasdaq, which look pretty the same. So I think, yeah, let's keep those original zones. We'll just probably use some different alerts. So just moving this alert here for that bullish move up, and yeah, probably setting an alert just at this high so we know when price takes that high out, potentially getting into that supply zone and giving confirmation for more sells. I think that looks pretty good for that. And then last thing we'll look at will be the S&P 500. So again, looking into the daily, actually let's look into the weekly so we can have a full analysis on that. So obviously this is what I was looking at on the weekly for S&P, this sell to buy region. Price has got into there very nicely in here, and giving its rejection up. So I think maybe the buys on S&P might be a bit easier to catch, seeing as we're still just getting that first reaction from this major obvious zone. So looking into the daily time frame here, and again 4 hour, we can see this sell to buy here gave respect over here to continue higher, and then price has retraced into this imbalance here. Still some imbalances open in this region, so I don't know if it will come back down again, but I think the best thing to do is draw up your zones and then just sort of play accordingly. As you can see here, the major movement up was after this area here, which is what it's retraced into, so it does make sense why it retraced into there. And yeah, let's have a look into this demand zone that follows. So I want to have a look into there, right over there. Yeah, keep that like that. And then looking into the hourly zone, you can see that sell to buy with imbalance, all this sort of stuff. So I'm going to put an alert just at this wick so we know when it gets taken out and when price can potentially get into this area and continue higher. Potentially playing sells down to there could be an option. It's probably worth seeing whether you get a manipulation of these highs here and then it dropping off. Then that may be enough for it to give you movement down to the demand zone to play the continuation moves higher. So just probably worth setting an alert at those highs there. What we're hoping for is a manipulation of those highs, and then a short down to this movement, down to this zone here. Yeah, for S&P it looks pretty good. Still an unmitigated demand zone in there, as you can see with that rally base rally imbalance still freed up in there. So I think, yeah, so there we have that full breakdowns of the pairs and indices that I'm looking at for this week. And I'll say it again, if you're someone that wants to actually start benefiting from these sorts of calls along with live trading calls before they're actually released on YouTube, then you know the drill. Please do just drop me a message on my Instagram saying mentorship and we'll discuss things further. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video and found value, then please do give it a like and don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video for more of that trading source.